Hello and welcome back to the Dougie Critchley Football YouTube channel. I've already done the 10 biggest upgrades in football this season. Today I do the 10 biggest downgrades. Let's get into it. First up, let's talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold to Jeremie Frimpong. Look, Jeremie Frimpong, I don't want to go in on him personally or as a player too much. He was exceptional for Bayer Leverkusen. I did have some doubts about whether he'd be a good fit for Arne Slot's system, and this is mainly due to injury. He's really not managed to get going so far in a Liverpool shirt. He's missed 15 games. He's only played 84 minutes in the Premier League, but this departure cannot be underplayed. Trent Alexander-Arnold, whether Liverpool fans wanted to admit it in the summer or not, was a crucial component of that title win. He contributed 3 goals and 6 assists in 28 league starts. That was the 5th time in the last 6 seasons that he contributed at least 9 league goals. He contributed 92 assists in his Liverpool career. That ranks joint 6th in their all-time history, along with John Barnes. He was a phenomenal, unique passer from deep, and they miss him so much. Even last season, where Trent wasn't at his absolute best, only Salah with 18, freakish season from him, could top his 6 league assists. He ranked 3rd in Europe for expected assists amongst defenders, behind Alex Grimaldo and Anthony Catchy. He ranked 1st in Europe amongst fullbacks for progressive passes and passes into the final third, and 2nd behind Oscar Mingueza for passes into the box. That sort of impact cannot be underplayed. He was crucial last year to Liverpool's title win. Jeremie Frimpong hasn't got going due to injury. It's a downgrade as it stands. Next up, I want to talk about Gianluigi Donnarumma to Chevalier. Now, Donnarumma left PSG in the summer after 4 years, after a contract issue with the club. Chevalier arrives. He'd been Lille #1 for the last 3 seasons. Last year, he was absolutely phenomenal. He gets named in the Ligue 1 team of the season. He gets named Ligue 1 goalkeeper of the year. He prevents over 7 XG. It looked like a really solid signing. But so far, admittedly it is early days, this signing hasn't worked out. His save percentage has gone from 75% to 68%. That ranks 9th in Ligue 1. There are 20 goalkeepers in Ligue 1 that have prevented more XG. He's made mistakes pretty consistently from the very first game. He made a mistake against Spurs in the Super Cup, against Marseille, Barcelona, Lille, Strasbourg. Number of mistakes so far this season, and he's been given so much abuse on social media, which I'm not condoning whatsoever, that he had to disable his Instagram account. He is only 24 years old. It's far too early to write him off as a complete flop, especially given the performances and consistency of performance that he showed at Lille, but so far hasn't worked out. Next up, I want to talk about Noni Madueke to Jamie Gittens. For what it's worth, I was behind this signing, or the addition of Jamie Gittens in the summer. I'm actually a big Jamie Gittens fan. I thought he was exceptional in the first half of last year for Borussia Dortmund, but he hasn't really got going so far in a Chelsea shirt. There have been the odd display, the odd moment, an assist against Burnley. He had a great game against Ajax. He played really well against Wolves in the Cup a few weeks ago, but he's only been trusted to start 3 league games so far. His expected goals and his expected assists per 90 are at about 0.3. Alejandro Garnacho, who of course has years of Premier League experience, is over 0.7. Jamie Gittens so far hasn't caught a light. Jamie Gittens so far just 1 goal contribution in the league. And bear in mind that he was replacing Noni Madueke, who admittedly did frustrate Chelsea fans at times with his lack of consistency, but was still pretty important for Chelsea last season. He ranked 9th in the squad for league minutes. There was only Palmer and Jackson that scored more league goals than him. He was at over 0.6 expected goals and assists per 90. And he's only a couple of years older than Jamie Gittens. So he's at double that expected performance across a single game. And Jamie Gittens is only a couple of years younger. So it's going to take a little while for him to get up to the speed in the Premier League that Madueke was showing already. And yes, Madueke hasn't put up massive numbers at Arsenal, but I think most neutrals would clearly put their bias aside and say that he's been a solid addition for an Arsenal squad that looks super strong right now. Again, similar to Chevalier, I'm not ruling out Jamie Gittens growing into this campaign. I think he has had moments so far, but he is a work in progress. He is a project player, and so far he's not got up to the level that even Madueke showed last season, which wasn't even his best campaign. Next up, I want to talk about Theo Hernandez to Pervis Estupinan. Now, this is one of the clearest downgrades of this entire video. I think Pervis Estupinan hasn't really got going in a Milan shirt, and I'll talk about his role in this Milan squad, which has been very minimal. But Theo Hernandez, ultimately, he was a little bit inconsistent at times. He was very much a love-to-hate figure, I think it's fair to say. Neutrals despised him. Even Milan fans became frustrated with him at different points. But he was still pretty consistent in terms of his output. He contributed at least 7 goals in each of his 5 seasons at the club, in the league alone. He was at 0.3 goals and assists per game across his entire time there. He leaves for Al Hilal in the summer for a €25 million move, and they had to fill that hole in terms of attacking numbers. Pervis Estupinan arrived, and I was a big fan of this at the time. He was signed for just £17 million, and I was a fan of this at the time. I did think that he could get to grips with Serie A pretty quickly and actually become a really top Serie A left back, but it hasn't really worked out. He got sent off against Juventus in October. He missed their next 3 games with injury. He's then been on the bench for 3 of their last 4 fixtures, and he's been replaced by 19-year-old academy graduate Davide Bartasaghi. And he flat out has just played better than him. At 19, in his first full campaign really, he's at 1.6 chances created to Estupinan's 1.2. He's winning over 60% of his challenges. Estupinan's not winning 40% of his. And for an experienced player with years of Premier League football under his belt, Estupinan's been a real... disaster is maybe a bit harsh, but a real flop so far. This signing hasn't worked out. Next up, I want to talk about Bryan and Mbeumo to Dango To Ouattara. Now, this isn't really about Dango To Ouattara, who I actually think is a pretty decent player, but Bryan and Mbeumo was phenomenal last year for Brentford. 20 goals and 7 assists in the league alone. Only Salah and Isak contributed more goals than him. He goes to Man United in a big money move, and he's looked like Man United's best attacker so far this season, in a pretty poor Man United side, which goes to show his quality. It was always going to be really difficult for anyone to replace his output. In comes Dango To Ouattara. He was signed for £42.5 million, a club record deal, and Brentford fans will not be concerned that I've included him in this list, because they've gone off like an absolute rocket so far this season. At the time of recording, there is going to be another round of fixtures prior to this video coming out, but they sit 10th. They're only 3 points off 4th. There's been big wins against Man United, against Liverpool, against Newcastle, and Dango To Ouattara hasn't been a complete disaster, but he's 10th for league minutes. He scored 3, but he's not assisted any goals so far, and what I think it is a lack of consistency between games. He's not necessarily playing the full 90 in every match, and he has had some great performances. He scored against Villa on the opening day, he scored against Liverpool in that crushing win as well, or that really dramatic win, let's say, and he scored against Burnley at the weekend too. He's now only getting 29% of his shots on target. That's the same as Jefferson Lerma. He's only created 6 chances to date. That is topped by 129 Premier League players. His dribble success rate is actually under 30%. It's the same as Everton's Jake O'Brien, who plays as a right back. This is not what you're expecting for £42.5 million. And as I say, he's had some good performances. Brentford won't mind. I'm sure he can build into this season, but so far it's a clear downgrade. To be fair, whoever came in was likely to be a downgrade on Bryan and Mbeumo though. He was that good last year. Next up, I want to talk about Marcus Rashford to Evan Guessand. Now, people underplay, I don't know why they do, but people really underplay Marcus Rashford's impact at Villa last season. He finished the campaign in half a year with 4 goals and 6 assists, and actually started their final 3 Champions League games of the campaign, in the second leg against Club Brugge, against PSG, in both those quarter-finals where they're actually slightly unlucky to lose. He grabs 2 assists in those 3 games. He had a massive impact. His expected goals and his expected assists per 90 was above 1 in that period. And he's taken that form over to Barcelona now. He's already contributed 15 goals and assists in all competitions so far this season. Whereas Evan Guessand, who was their big money signing, let's say, I know Jadon Sancho and Harvey Elliott arrived on loan, but in terms of permanent arrivals, they committed a lot to Evan Guessand after a great few years at Nice, playing in a variety of different positions, but so far hasn't worked out. 1 goal and 0 assists in 16 games. His expected goals and assists per 90 have gone from 0.32 in his final year in France to 0.08. That's the same as Everton's Michael Keane. There are other troubling stats here as well. He's had 3 shots in 426 minutes. He's only created 2 chances. He's completed 6 dribbles. The good thing about Evan Guessand, though, which Villa fans might well like to hear, is that he's working really, really hard. He's completing 3.2 defensive actions, so a tackle or an interception per 90. That is not the most in Villa's squad in terms of total number of defensive actions, but per 90, it's more than Matty Cash, who's actually completed the most total defensive actions, if that makes sense. So he's definitely working hard, but Villa and Unai Emery would have been desperate for more output so far from Evan Guessand, and unlike Jadon Sancho and Harvey Elliott, who have the advantage of already playing in the Premier League for a number of years, he's of course arrived and a little bit cold, let's say. You look at the impact of Xavi Simons and Florian Wirtz. A number of players have struggled with arriving in the Premier League, and Evan Guessand, I'm afraid, is no different so far. Now I want to talk about Son Heung-min to Xavi Simons, Wilson Odobert, Matheus Tel. Let's just discuss all of that situation, because Son Heung-min, I don't want to paint him out as a player that played anywhere close to his best last season. I think it was clear that he was a declining force. He really wasn't at his best, but he still contributed 11 goals and 11 assists in 46 games. And he left Spurs as their 5th highest appearance maker of all time, their 4th highest goal scorer of all time, their 1st in terms of assists in the club's entire history. A lot of Spurs fans that I see online actually rank Son Heung-min's impact at Spurs higher than someone like Harry Kane. Massive impact for that club, huge leader in the dressing room, and so far the new arrivals, Xavi Simons, the most experienced of the lot, haven't stepped up to the plate. Look, it has to be tempered with the fact that James Maddison and Dejan Kulusevski, who had been expected to start the majority of games at the start of this season, they've been out injured, of course. Kudus, I think, has made a really solid impact on that right-hand side. Odobert and Tel on that left-hand side, or Tel when he's played through the middle, I don't think they've looked particularly ready to really excel in the Premier League just yet, but I was expecting a little bit more of Xavi Simons, and so far it has been a little bit disappointing. 0 goals and 2 assists in 17 games, and his underlying numbers are a little bit troubling. 0.3 shots on target per 90 is the same as Nico Williams of Nottingham Forest, and I actually saw him live the other day at Arsenal in the Emirates, and he came off the bench and he was actually one of Spurs' more exciting players. There was a really low bar for that in that game, but he did pick up the ball, he was willing to drive, he was willing to make things happen, but so far it hasn't really caught a light. I think he's had some great games, particularly in the Champions League, but in the Premier League so far, far too easy to bully. He's looked a little bit lost at points, he's looked like his confidence has been very easily hit as well, and I was expecting a little bit more from one of my favourite Bundesliga players over the last few seasons. He's only created 6 chances, which is fewer than Destiny Udogie, and the Dutchman has played over 100 more minutes than the Italian left wing back. He's only completed 28% of his dribbles. It just hasn't really worked out as a signing so far. So whilst you can look at Tel and Odobert as well, who were at Spurs last season, Xavi Simons trying to replace the impact of someone like Son Heung-min as the more senior player hasn't worked out so far, which is why I'm desperate for Spurs to go into their first Levy-less transfer window this January and drop £65 million on Antoine Semenyo if they can. I think Arsenal will be deliberating over whether they want to do that, whether they should do that is another debate as well, given their plethora of options now on the left wing, with Eze having played really well there, with Odegaard back at full fitness. I don't think Chelsea will go for Antoine Semenyo. I don't think Liverpool will either, necessarily in January too. I think the window is open for Spurs to go for this, and I think they should. Next up, I want to talk about Matheus Cunha to Lopez. Now, in a similar vein to Mbeumo, Cunha was always going to be next to impossible to replace. He was absolutely brilliant for Wolves last season, by far their most league goals and assists, ahead of Strand Larsen. Leaves £62.5 million move to Man United, and whilst he hasn't had necessarily the numbers at Man United, I think it's clear to see that this is a really high quality player. His ability to dribble, to get out of tight spaces, to progress the balls through the thirds, to take on a man on either side, this is a really high quality player. And his replacements, or Wolves' replacements for him in those attacking areas, Arakadare, never played in a top 5 league, and Lopez, who was very much a bit part player at Celta Vigo last season, hasn't really got going, or hasn't been trusted to get going yet by either Vitor Pereira or Rob Edwards, and it is a little bit concerning. So far this season, he's played just 117 league minutes. That ranks 22nd in Wolves' squad. Actually, when he has played, I think he's actually looked quite bright, but this is a guy that hasn't been trusted to play more than 45 minutes in a single league game so far this campaign. So it's not really a beef at Lopez, it's more just what were Wolves expecting when you lose a player of Matheus Cunha's quality, and this is the player that you bring in as his natural replacement. I know Lopez can play in a few different positions, a bit like Matheus Cunha, and he won't necessarily nail down that sort of inside left starting position. Maybe he'll be used in a few different positions as he adapts to the league. He's obviously a very young player, has to adapt to a new country, culture, environment, players, teammates around him, etc. But this one has been a downgrade, I think it's fair to say. Penultimately, I want to talk about Florian Wirtz to Elise Ben-Seghir. Now, say whatever you want about Florian Wirtz's performances for Liverpool so far this season. I actually think he's a bit overhated. I don't think he's been as bad as people have made out. But he was an absolutely massive player to replace for Bayer Leverkusen, an absolute totem of their success in recent seasons. He leaves, obviously, for Liverpool. Elise Ben-Seghir is signed on the 31st of August for a player that's not even 21 until February, arriving that late in a window. Really, really difficult scenario. You're replacing a huge player. Admittedly, he wasn't the only player that they looked to sign. Erik ten Hag, of course, was doing their transfer business. He was fired 3 games later. Hjulman comes in. They also signed Malik Tillman and Poku, etc. Young players with enormous potential. And it's just as well, because they have looked significantly brighter than at least Ben-Seghir, who hasn't really got going so far. He's only been trusted with 168 league minutes so far, just 2 starts. He actually hasn't played more than 26 minutes in a league game since the end of September. Really, really troubling. How is a guy supposed to get going if he's not really been given those minutes on the pitch? Perhaps it's a matter of training, not really shining in training compared to the likes of Tillman, Poku, Mazza, Kafane, etc. There's a lot of young players all crying out for minutes, all trying to resettle in a hierarchy that was completely obliterated in the summer, but he hasn't really performed so far. His shots have gone from over 3 with Monaco to 1.1, but I would say that there are some signs of life. He's at over 3 shot creating actions per 90, which of course will be skewed by the fact he's not played that many minutes. He's completing over 60% of his dribbles, and as I say, this guy's not even 21 until February. We've got to give this signing time. They clearly signed a number of players hoping that 2 or 3 would emerge as their next superstars to take them forward in the next 2, 3, 4 years. This is not a one-season signing, but it's just as well, because so far, at least Ben-Seghir, it hasn't really worked out. Finally, let's talk about Martin Zubimendi to Yangel Herrera. This is a little bit tricky, and it's similar to a few of these other signings. There's a little bit of a theme developing. This is another player that was signed on deadline day. Martin Zubimendi, they of course knew that he was going to leave. He nearly joined Liverpool the year before. There was talk about Real Madrid. I think he's generally been very good for Arsenal, although I thought he was very poor actually at the weekend against Chelsea. Pretty much anonymous in that game. Herrera arrives late on. Experience obviously with Girona over the last few seasons. Experience, well, he was a Man City former player, sent out on a number of loans, but he hasn't really got going. I think he's played 90 minutes to date. He was left out of their squad in 6 of their first 10 games, and he's now injured. And Real Sociedad, prior to a defeat at the weekend against Villarreal, were starting to get a little bit of consistency going without him in the squad as well, which doesn't bode well when he does get fit in terms of breaking into this starting 11. Could they have known this? Potentially, although he didn't miss a single game last season with injury. He did miss 37 over the previous 2 campaigns. And look, you look at the fact that they struggled at the start of this season. Emmanuel Alguacil no longer there. Zubimendi, massive player for them over the last few seasons. Definitely one of La Liga's star midfielders. Emerged into the Spain squad during his time there as well. Huge boots to fill in. It took Gonzalo Guedes and Carlos Soler a while to settle in this Real Sociedad side too. But this has been a disappointing start and an injury-afflicted one too. So guys, that was all I've got time for on my 10 biggest downgrades so far this season. What did you guys think of the list? Did I miss anyone out? Was I a little bit too harsh on any of them? Let me know in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, please do like it, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. I am approaching 10,000 subscribers. I'm hoping to get there by Christmas. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will catch you next time. Lots of love. Peace.